Hello, my name is Marcus Smith of WANS News with this week's genealogy report coming to you broadcasting all the way from Harnett County, North Carolina. Today our featured is on the McNeill story dating back to the late 1700s and early 1800s in the Barbecue Township of Cumberland County, presently Harnett County, North Carolina. Through the works of several individuals, this family has been able to connect two generations of 13 siblings back together using DNA, wills, deeds and slave inventories. There are well over 200 DNA matches that have been identified as descendants of this family that have crossed many races and cultures throughout the world. Let's hear this amazing story.
My name is Mahalia Bunch. I currently live in Tyler, Texas.
Hi, I'm Diane Nelson Trotter. I live in Fontana, California.
My name is Bruce Massey. I currently live in Silver Spring, Maryland.
We are
all DNA
cousins. Yay!
My name is Desi L. Campbell. I am so excited to be with you here today as we discuss the McNeill story. Well, let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I am a native of Washington, D.C. I am a graduate of W.G. Enlow High School in Raleigh, North Carolina. I continued my education at Johnson C. Smith University in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I received a BA degree in music business. I had also attended Savannah State University in the teacher education program. I presently am a chorus teacher at Overhills Middle School in Spring Lake, North Carolina. I serve as the president of the Sandhills chapter of the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society in Spring Lake, North Carolina. I'm a member of the Phi Beta Sigma fraternity here in Spring Lake, North Carolina as well. I am the executive director for the African American Experience here in Harnett County, North Carolina. I have authored several written family documentaries, not only for my family, but for several families throughout this country. I am excited about what we're going to experience with this McNeill story. This story is amazing. We have two generations of siblings that we have been able to put back together using ancestry DNA and other means, and we are excited to present this to you at this national conference.
History has documented the once dusty roads of Harnett County, North Carolina, as a place that laid the foundation as a place of hope, a place of faith, a place of healing for our forefathers. The original residents have cultivated the land, built their homes, raised their families, and served as a catalyst in defining the culture and geographical placement of Harnett County, North Carolina. It was founded in 1855, 10 years before the Emancipation Proclamation. It was named for the Revolutionary War soldier Cornelius Harnett, and was birthed out of Cumberland County, North Carolina. Many African Americans resided as a result of the slave trade on either large plantations or small farms. It is believed that the slaves in this geographical area were not treated as other slaves from other areas. In fact, many slave owners allowed them to continue to live on their property and or gave them land to farm and raise their families after the war. Most of the large plantations were in the Linden and Averysboro area. After slavery, many of our ancestors were in the Stewart and Anderson Creek townships per the 1870 census.
And so it came to pass. It was rumored that Americans were coming, seeking to find labor to build this new country called America. Africa, a country rich in resources, culture, and assumed uncivilized by American standards. Then these travelers set out to gain bodies for labor without citizenship, dignity, and education. African families were displaced and destroyed, gathered as if they were criminals in their own country. From various tribes, the African that were accustomed to being free now was a slave, and with much indignation placed in the bottom of a boat like wild animals. Chained, legs and hands, women and men, old and young, chained with no voice and assumed ignorant to all matters of life. Finally, arriving on the shores of the port cities within these United States and realizing that there was a unique problem that we're facing other than suddenly being placed in bondage. Communication became the main issue to overcome. As a result of the demand for hard labor, communication was primo to overcome to make work less physically challenging on the physical bodies.
North Carolina was known for the longleaf pine. It is believed that no other place in the world existed with such magnificent forests with 300 miles long and 100 miles wide. North Carolina became the leading turpentine production territory in the world. The tar and the turpentine went all over the world to help patch ships from various ports. Only North Carolina could produce the grade of tar that found such favor throughout the world. The trees that were south of the Cape Fear River were considered top of the line, and to the rest of the state. North Carolina became very prosperously famous throughout the world for its turpentine products. Naval stores, they were called because they were used for mostly caulking ships and tarring ropes. Around 1835, they learned use of the copper steel in the distillation in crude tar and rendering of pure turpentine. This process was simple. All that was needed was a tree, an axe, a bucket, and a crude dipping paddle, and a workman with a strong back. With an axe, the woodsman chipped a box in the trunk of the tree about a foot off the ground. Chips were removed above the box to induce the flow of resin from the vines of the tree. As the substance flowed out, some of it tended to harden on the chip's place, stopping the flow. The tree was merely healing its own wounds in the way that blood will clot about a wound stopping the flow. Periodically, it was necessary to reopen the wound by a new chipping. Tools were developed for this purpose. They were known as hacks. Two things contributed to the distillation of this industry. The trees were bled to death. After a while, the producers and consumers discovered that there was really no difference between the trees in North Carolina and the trees in other parts of the South. The industry moved off southward, and during the 80s and 90s, the state lost innumerable excellent families. They moved to Georgia and Alabama and Florida and other southern states.
Jennie McLean was born in Virginia in about 1785, just 2 years after the end of the Revolutionary War, most likely in the Chesapeake Bay area. Most slaves coming from Western Africa came into this area. Jennie's parents would have been some of these misfortunate people who were taken against their will from their homeland and their families and everything they knew. They would have been forced into unimaginable conditions on crowded ships under unsanitary conditions and taken to a new world that they knew nothing about. When arriving in Virginia, they would have been locked away until paraded at a public auction to be sold. After being bought, they would begin the long journey to their new home in the Cumberland Harnett area of North Carolina. Jennie and her parents and sibling, if they had not been separated in Virginia, would have worked long hours on the tobacco plantation of John sober McLean or in the turpentine industry of the area. In 1793, at the age of just 8 years old, Jennie was taken from her family when her owner John sober McLean willed Jennie to his daughter Nancy Ann McLean Clark. Between the year 1793 and the time Jennie gained her freedom in 1865, she was sold or willed 4 more times to different members of the McLean and Clark families. Sometime between 1800 and 1820, Nancy Ann McLean Clark sold Jennie to her uncle Archibald McLean Sr. In 1820, Archibald McLean Sr. willed Jennie to his son Peter McLean. Sometime between 1825 and 1835, Peter sold Jennie to his cousin Hugh McCraney Clark. In 1838, Hugh McCraney Clark sold Jennie to his cousin Archibald McLean Jr. We can only imagine the very hard time Jennie had and the sadness of being separated from her family. At the young age of 15, Jennie met Joe, also a slave, and they had their first child, Sara McNeill because she later was owned by the McNeill family. In the years that followed, Jennie and Joe had 9 more children, making 10 in all. In 1820, after the birth of her 10th child, Jennie was taken from her husband and some of her children and willed to Peter McLean. Over the years, the children of Jennie and Joe were sold or willed to different families in the Cumberland and Harnett County area. Little is known of Joe McLean, but we know he was born about 1783 in North Carolina. Around 1800 he met Jennie and they began a family together. In the will of Archibald McLean Sr. dated 1820, he gives Joe to his son Alexander McLean. In a deed dated 1838, Hugh McCraney Clark is selling Jennie and mentions that she is the wife of Joe, so we know Joe would have been with Hugh McCraney Clark at that time. In 1852, Joe is listed as a slave of Hugh McLean, the son of Archibald McLean Sr. Joe McLean lived to be at least 70 years old, if not older. With the help of the DNA from the descendants of Jennie and Joe, their children have been identified and their grandchildren have been identified. What a wonderful thing to have been able to bring this family back together after so many years apart. Some of the grandchildren of Jennie and Joe were sold off to other states. I cannot imagine the pain of being separated and not knowing the fate of a family member. It is remarkable that Jennie lived to the age of 95 at a time of terrible diseases, the Civil War and enduring slavery. We can only imagine what she saw and endured in her 95 years of life and Joe in his 70-plus years. What amazing and strong people Jennie and Joe McLean and their children were, and how much they all contributed to the building up of the Cumberland and Harnett counties of North Carolina.
From the union of Joe and Jennie McLean, 13 children were born. First child was Sara McNeill, born around 1800. She married Sherd McNeill.
Hi, my name is Dinah Hill. I live in Mount Pleasant, Utah, and I am a descendant of Jennie and Joe McLean. I come through their daughter Sara McNeill, who married Sherd McNeill.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dessie L. Campbell, and I also am a descendant of Joe and Jennie McLean through their daughter Sara McNeill, who married Sherd McNeill.
Sara McNeill was born into slavery in Harnett County, North Carolina, on the plantation of Nancy Ann McLean Clark around the year 1800. Sara was the oldest child born to Jennie and Joe McLean. It must be noted that some of Jennie and Joe's children go by the name of McNeill and some by the name of McLean. During the time of slavery, the slave was required to take on the owner's last name. Some slaves would keep the owner's name, while others would change it. That is why you will see the name of McLean and McNeill used for different members of the family. Sometime after her birth in 1800, and before 1812, Sara was sold to Neil and Margaret McNeill, who had migrated from Jura, Argyll, Scotland to Cumberland County, North Carolina, the part of the county that later became Harnett County. In the year 1812, when Sarah was 12 years old, Neil McNeill died and Sarah was willed to Hector, Mary, Catherine, and Sarah, the sons and daughters of Neil. Sarah ended up living with Mary McNeill because in 1841 Mary, who had never married, left no posterity, willed Sarah to her sister Catherine, who also did not marry. In 1850, Sarah is living with Catherine McNeill. Catherine McNeill dies around 1859 and, leaving no posterity, wills Sarah to her niece Jeanette McNeill, who also never married. Sometime around 1814, Sarah met Sherard or Sherd McNeill, and they had their first child, Elizabeth, who also went by Lizzie or Bet, around the year 1815. Sarah and Sherard's children were divided up among Hector, Mary, Catherine, and Sarah, the four siblings, and some were sold off to other people. Sarah's daughter, Miss Jane McNeill, was sold to a neighbor, William Holder. In 1841, Sarah has four of her children living with her. They were Charles, Bet, or Elizabeth or Lizzie, Letty, and William or Will. Sarah and Sherard or Sherd had 13 children that have been found with many hours of research and with the help of DNA. Unfortunately, no records have been found of Sherard or Sherd. He may have been sold to another state or may have died early. Some of his descendants carry on the name of a Sherard or Sherd. In 1865, the Civil War ends and the slaves are finally free. No trace of Sarah is found in the 1870 census, but some of her children are found. We see Sarah again in the 1880 census. Sarah is 80 years old and living with her son Charles McNeill and his family in Upper Little River, Harnett County, North Carolina. Sarah was at least 80 years old or older when she died. Sarah and Sherard or Sherd and their children would have spent their lives working in the production of turpentine in Harnett and Cumberland County area of North Carolina. One can only imagine the suffering of being enslaved and having to endure the hardships of that life. We can be proud that our progenitors were such strong and resilient people that were able to rise above the terrible hardships they had to endure. We as their grandchildren can be grateful to have inherited this wonderful trait. The children of Sarah and Sherard or Sherd McNeill are as follows. Elizabeth, who also went by Lizzie or Bet, she was born about 1815 in Cumberland County, North Carolina. She died in 1909 in Barbecue, Harnett, North Carolina. She married Daniel J. Harrington, born about 1835 in Cumberland County, North Carolina, and died before 1880 in Moore County.
Hello, my name is Nelson Smith, and I live in Montclair, North Carolina. I am a descendant of Joe and Jennie McLean through their son, Will McNeill, who married Amy McNeill.
Miss Jane McNeill Holder, born about 1820, Cumberland County, North Carolina, died 1843, Turnback, Lawrence County, Missouri. She was not married but had a child with her white plantation owner, Wiley Holder. He was born 25th of April, 1812 in Duplin County, North Carolina, died 2nd of June, 1888, Harnett County, North Carolina. Gabriel McNeill, later in life went by the last name of Backus, born about 1825, Cumberland County, died after 1900 in Pensacola, Escambia, Florida. He married first Caroline McLean, born March 1827, Cumberland County, North Carolina. He married Caroline in Harnett County. Caroline died after 1870 in Harnett County. Gabriel then married, as his second wife, Maria in Florida. She was born July 1852 in Alabama.
McLean. I live in Syracuse, New York. And I'm a descendant of Joe and Jennie McLean through their daughter, Celia McNeill, who married Jack McLean. Celia.
Hello family. I'm Devon Webb. I'm 30 years old of age, and I am originally from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Okay, so my fourth great grandmother name was Judah McLean, McNeill McLean. Okay, she then had a son named Cyrus McLean, which then had a daughter named Flora McLean. Flora McLean is my second great grandmother from Lillington, North Carolina.
Hello, my name is Nelson Smith, and I live in Moncure, North Carolina. I am a descendant of Joe and Jennie McLean through their daughter, Tippy Jane McLean, who married Isaac Nurse.
Hello, my name is Kimberly Morris. I reside in Gulfport, Mississippi. I am a descendant of Jennie and Joe McLean by the way of Lucy McLean and her husband, Richard Chapman.